Hi, my name is Ramna. My personal blog is .netiq.com. If you want to receive my latest videos on your Facebook wall, please go to the .netiq.com. Right side you see a Facebook like button. If you click on this like button, you will start getting my updates on your Facebook wall. Coming to today's topic, WCF Duplex contracts. Before we start discussing about duplex contracts and dual HTTP binding, I'm going to cover a bit about real-time apps and publisher subscriber model. Coming to real-time apps, uh, anything like if any game scorecard or any if you see live updates, any live if you're following a live updates of any game, we call it as a real time. For example, if stock markets when it starts trading, if you want to see any particular company's stocks performance through web or TV, so we call it as a real time. So coming to the real-time application, any real-time application, they implement following the one of the two mechanisms. Those two mechanisms are either polling or pushing. I will explain you what is polling and pushing. To that, we will take an example of football match live updates. The site is providing the football match live updates, like goals, scorecard updates. In that case, we just go and click the particular match link, and it's going to navigate to the scorecard live updates page. In that page, in the polling mechanism, what happens is your client, means your browser, is going to keep requesting the server. That means that every certain period, your browser is going to request the server for live updates. So every 10 seconds you will request a server and server will give the response. Every 10 seconds means it's going to request the server and server give the response. So periodically if you're requesting the server to get the updates, we call it as a polling. In the pushing mechanism, the client is going to just tell the server, I want the updates of this football match. Next time onwards, server will find is there any updates for that match. If it has any update, it is going to push the data. So rather client is going to the server for every 10 seconds. Server is going to push the data whenever it has updates. That be called as a pushing mechanism. So in the football match, if you see a 3 to 4 goals within a 45 minutes, that means that just imagine in polling approach, every 10 seconds you are generating a request. That means that within a 45 minutes you almost generate 270 requests. But you have a 4 updates. That means whenever you have a goal, your scorecard is going to refresh. But you are generating 270 requests for 4 updates. If imagine if hundreds of users is accessing the same page, in that case multiplying the users into 270 requests, you are putting a lot of burden on the server. In the pushing mechanism, for the same example, you hardly have a 4 to 5 request and response communication between user, client and server. So in this particular example, the pushing mechanism is the best mechanism. There might be some cases where you have a updates for every second. In that case, the polling is better than the pushing, because the server is trying to push one update. By the time you have so many updates is queued up, so you have a lagging of so many updates, so it's going to delay dispatching the events. In that case, better to go with the polling mechanism. So why I am saying the pushing mechanism is in the publisher subscriber model we use the pushing mechanism. Publisher subscriber model means user will subscribe for the live updates of particular football match. Means the user is subscribing for the football match. Server is going to be a publisher. So the publisher component of the server is going to publish the updates to the client whenever it has an update. That means that publisher subscriber model basically it uses the pushing mechanism. Publisher is going to publish or push the data whenever it has an update. So how these two related to the duplex contracts? That is the next topic. In the duplex contract is basically the relationship between two service contracts. Here the two service contract means one is at the server side we implement, another service contract we implement at the client side. If you just imagine whatever the service contract existed at the server side, we use for the subscribing. So the client will call this service contract and subscribe for a particular data. So this service is, as I mentioned, one service contract is going to implement it at the client side. So this service contract, next time whenever it has to push the data, it is going to call this service contract and let the client, you have an update, and take the update. So basically we have a two service contract. One service contract is implemented at server side. The another service contract we call as a callback contract. The another service contract we implemented the client side. So using these two service contracts, we can provide a publisher subscriber model using the WCF services. In .NET, by default, net TCP binding and net named pipe binding, these two support the bidirectional communication or bidirectional channel communication. But in coming to the HTTP, there is no direct support for the bidirectional. So in the .NET WCF, they introduced a new binding called WsDualHttpBinding. binding. This WsDualHttp binding will support the bidirectional communication, or it has two channels. One channel to client to server, and the another channel is server to client. So we call it as a bidirectional. So internally the WsDualHttp binding opens two channels, one channel for client to server and another channel server to client. I am going to show you one example that gives the more idea of what is the duplex contracts and how to implement. This is my service library. It has two contracts. As I mentioned, it's a duplex contract, means it has two contracts, one for service implementation server side, another is for client. Yeah, see, here is the iDemo service. We are using this contract at server side. We are implementing at the server side. iClient callback, we are using this contract to implement at the client side. If you notice here, the service contract, it has a attribute service contract with a callback contract. So you are specifying that this service is going to use this service contract to notify the client. So the particular callback contract is this. So internally the service is going to use this service contract, to notify the clients. And one more thing is, this operation we specified as is one way. That means just a client call this method, he won't get any response. Just he will trigger the server that I want this data, I want this updates for particular date. So he is just subscribing to the server, and just he won't get any response because it's one way. Even if you want, you can make it two way, but there won't be any harm. We just is saying that is one way is the true, because just he won't get any response. And coming to the iClient callback, this is the service contract which is going to implement at the client side. So this is also one way, because the server is going to push the data. Server is just pushing the data to, just calling this method, server won't get any response. Just server is calling this method and passing the updates information as a string. Coming to the implementation of the server side service contract is called iDemo service. This is the implementation class. So in the service behavior attribute, if you see that I specified it as a single. Single means basically it's a singleton class. Only one instance of the object is existed. It is going to serve all the requests. So internally I'm maintaining the operation. Basically operation context means every request, it means every user, whenever the first time they request, they subscribe, I'm taking that particular user operation context. That means this operation context is holding the channel communication, it's holding the client callback interface, client callback channel reference and everything. So whenever I get the request from the client, first I'm just taking his operation context and maintaining, storing in this dictionary. So whenever I want to push, I just loop through it and push the data using this operation context. That is the reason for I'm maintaining the dictionary. Yeah, coming to just this is nothing but in the constructor of this class, I'm just instantiating the dictionary of that particular operation context, and I'm using a thread to publish the data. Means just publish data is the another functionality which is going to just publish the data randomly every certain seconds, every 3 seconds. See, I will show you this method. Yeah, if you see this publish data, it's infinite loop, and I'm just checking that is there any user subscribed or not. This is my dictionary. If the dictionary count is 0, means no user subscribed. If any user subscribed, means the count is greater than 0. Just I'm loop throughing the dictionary, and each operation context I am finding the get callback channel. Get callback channel for this particular service is iClient callback. So using that proxy, and I'm calling the method, means this client side service contract has a one method is called notify message. I'm calling this method and passing some random message. So whenever I call this method is going to triggered or called at the client side. I'm going to show you how it is doing that. Okay, so after that, every 3 seconds I'm doing the same process. Just for the testing purpose I'm doing this. Otherwise, in realistic example, whenever you have update, you will push the data, you will call that service. Yeah, coming to the operation contract implementation, just I'm here the first time when the user called this method, that means he's subscribing. So I'm just adding the user operation context dot current. That means that particular user request operation context I'm storing into the dictionary. So I'm using this operation context when I'm publishing the data. Here I'm using it. Okay. Yeah, coming to the client side implementation. Here my client is a thick client, like console application, and I just added the service reference of that particular service. After adding the service reference to your project, the console application, go to the reference file. If you see here, the iDemo service is the service contract, your WCF service contract. You need to communicate this iDemo service when you are subscribing. iDemo service callback, basically actual callback service contract name is different, but when you add the service reference, it's converting it as a basically you might have a different services and services. Each service have its own callback. Rather giving the actual name, it's converted as the iDemo service callback. If you have another service, the service callback you will have separate. So in the duplex, you will have two contracts, right? One is the actual service contract, and another is the callback service contract. So we need to implement the iDemo service callback at the client side. Okay, we have two service contracts here. You see iDemo service callback, this is the one, and it has the one operation called notify message. Go to programs. Yes, this is my implementation class callback handler. I implemented the iDemo service callback. Okay, iDemo service callback, and iDemo service callback has a one method called notify message. This is the one I implemented. Okay, and just I want to call the iDemo service, that is the actual WCF service for subscribing. So once I subscribe, then after I will start receiving the data updates. Publishing service is going to publish the data, so I will receive, my client is going to receive the data. So here the start method is going to first instance contest. I am creating the instance contest, and I am passing the callback handler. Give a minute. Basically, this class is the implementation of the callback callback service contract. So this class has to receive the updates from the WCF service. Whenever it's pushed the data, whenever it's published the data, it is going to receive the data. So the instance contest, this is the important. Only in the duplex contracts only we use the instance contest, This instance context is going to represent the channel, like the communication between you, the client, and the particular session, the client and the server. So we need to create an instance context, and there is a demo service client. We use the service client to communicate the service contract. So instance context, basically this object is the implementation of your callback contract. So in your instance context, you are saying that passing the object reference. That means that whenever this instance context is going to use at the service contract to get this object reference to call this particular method. If you don't have an object reference, you cannot call this notify message. So that's why you are passing this particular object instance to the instance context, and in your service client, you are passing the instance context. This reference. Basically, you are passing the instance context reference in your service client, and after that you are calling the get message. That means that your get message is going to read your operation context. In the operation context, it is going to read your instance context, which is holding the object reference of the implementation, so that at the server side it can easily call this using this object reference and call this notify message. If you see, one more time I'm repeating, for the duplex contract, make sure you create an instance context and pass the object reference. This object reference is nothing but the class implemented the callback interface, and you need to pass the instance context object reference to your client, your service client, and after that you need to call the actual operation contract method. Okay, it's very simple. So in my program main method, I'm just creating the instance of the callback handler, the same callback handler object. I create an object, and I'm calling the start method. I'm passing the same, whatever the object I created, I'm passing that object reference to the start method, so that this object reference is going to use by instance context. It is going to pass it in when it's communicating to the service contract. Only the duplex contract, only you have the instance context. Okay. Let's see. Before we run this example, I want to show the configuration. Basically, as I mentioned, it's a when you are implementing the duplex contract, make sure you use the WsDualHttpBinding, and the binding configuration. Coming to the binding configuration, in the WsDualHttpBinding, these are not compulsory. You can ignore it. And coming to the one more important thing is, make sure that your behavior, it should be HTTP get enabled, it should be true. Make sure your HTTP get enabled is true for your behavior configuration. The particular service behavior configuration, HTTP get enabled equal true. And this one is include exception details true. This optional. If you want to include it, you can. Otherwise, you can ignore it. Okay. This HTTP get enabled is true, and the binding what we use is WsDualHttpBinding. Coming to the client side configuration. Client side configuration. You see that endpoint, the URL address, and the binding is the WsDualHttpBinding. The contract is iDemo service. Okay, that's it. Simple. And yeah, I'm running this example. The first time the request goes to the service, and after that the service is pushing the data. Every 3 seconds you can see a message. Testing, the random number it is generating and concatenating with the testing, because I pass the testing as the string. If I pass the different message, I will get the different message. Yeah, this is the where I pass the testing. Instead of that, if I pass the Ramana, I am subscribing with the Ramana message. Next time onwards, I will get the messages with the Ramana, concatenating with the Ramana. Okay. Let's see the result. And I hope we cover all the topics what we mentioned in initial, and I will come up with another interesting topic in my next screencast. Let me see this, what exactly. Yeah, now you see the example. Here you go. We are receiving the messages with Ramana and the random number. Basically, service is pushing the data. Okay. Thank you. Bye.